Welcome, parents and students, to Exclusive Tutoring San Diego's 2022 Plan Organized College. Now, what I want to do is go over a couple of things with you guys today that helps you understand what the college applications process really is about. All right. Now, we've been around since 2012. We're here in San Diego, California. And to start off, I want to go over this little quote: an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Whether Benjamin Franklin actually said it or not, I do believe in that, and something that my parents do also believe and instilled in me since I was a very young kid, understanding that investing in knowledge or education specifically does pay quite well over the years. And so a little bit about me. I like to call myself an education coach, but also a college counselor, mostly in this situation, a secondary college counselor to what your school provides, because your school does have, more control over your grades and setting you up with classes and things like that. However, I do supplement a lot of information and a lot of processes along with it that help my students get a leg ahead of the other kids in their school. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm from the Bay Area. Went to UCSD. I have my BA in psychology and a minor in economics, and got plenty of students that I've helped out when it comes, especially down to math, SATs, writing essays, and then college applications as well. I do have a book out on Amazon with Plan Organized College, but what you will get here today are some key essential items that will help you get going, and a couple of text messages from students that I've had from before. Because I really do believe that, when you get into college, it is oftentimes, this entire process that you spend all this time getting ready for. And oftentimes students and their parents don't know what exactly that needs to be done. And, UCSD, I'm very happy I ended up at UCSD. But however, it's, due to the fact that over the years, it's grown so much to create a better name for itself. But, actually, when I did first start, I actually was, rejected from, Berkeley and UCLA, and UCSD was actually my, in a sense, a backup for me that ended up being the school that I went to. And I'm very happy that that's what worked out. But there were things that happened on my application, and I will tell you a little bit about those stories as well that led to that I do believe, simply because there were things that were not really said or not really done. Questions that should have been asked, and we'll go over those today. Okay. And so from all this, I graduated from UCSD, tried to figure out what I wanted to do here in San Diego. And I realized that although there are great programs around here in San Diego, there were not many that focused upon prepping for college applications in the way that I really would have hoped that I was led through. And so, actually, it took me a couple of weeks where I kind of just locked myself in front of my computer and put together these little packets, these little guidance packets. And every single year, I do my best to update with new information, what's going on, do a presentation to help the people in the area understand what they're getting ready for. And so that's what this presentation is here. What you have here is you're going to get a couple of documents that have helped me and my old students out with putting together their applications and their essays. Okay, what we will have is we'll have a college list, an extracurricular list, and essay questions, just three main things. But with each one of those, I've got a couple of things I want to go over, a couple of things I want to talk about that help make it a little bit easier to understand what you need to get ready. Okay, so a few documents we want you to have: the college list, the extracurricular prep list, and then the essay questions. All right, I'm going to break them down for you. But one thing I do want to point out with my program, and that you'll see this over and over, is we guide, we do not write. Okay, one big thing about my application, all right, is that there are oftentimes college counselors and programs out there that want you to look and sound a certain way. And so they kind of put their hands into these applications, and they do a little too much in a sense. They write sentences for you, or they edit things in a manner that starts to sound like them instead of you. And so, one big part of my program is I'll always be here to help guide my students but I'm not here to write anything for them. I'm not touching my keyboard. I'm not actually writing anything in their papers, but I'm guiding them through the process so it will continue to sound like them. And I do believe that that's a very important key part to all of this. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And a big part of college applications is the preparation process, because you have to understand why we go to college and why we need these degrees nowadays. Oftentimes just comes down to the fact that we need to command a certain amount of living power, which is money, according to what jobs that we have. And due to the percentage of people that have a certain amount of education, you can understand that they have a certain amount of bargaining power when it comes down to their skills and their services. Okay, so here what you can understand is, high school diploma, that's likely where you're just getting to, where you're at, aiming for that high school diploma, and you have the option of getting your AA. This is community college down here, which takes about 2 years. However, you can go into a bachelor's degree instead, and that's your 4 years, right? Your bachelor's of the arts and bachelor of the sciences. I like to think of this as book smarts. This is application and actually doing things on, hands-on experience, labs and things like that, that type of approach. This is more of research type or like teaching and research based. And this is more of a, hands-on experimental type of situations. From there, you have, additional professional degrees, you have your master's degrees and your doctorate degrees, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about this path right here, getting you into your bachelor's program, right? And why is it that we need to do that? Well, it all started when Bush was president. He put together something called No Child Left Behind. What it was meant to do was meant to help us create funding for the schools by actually testing them. But what will happen is if they don't do well, they'll fire your teachers. And if you do well, you'll get funding. So it's kind of backwards, is that you'll get more money if your school does well, whereas it should have been funding schools that were doing poorly, right? And so it was kind of a backwards way of thinking, because what we wanted to do was we just wanted to increase the high school graduation rate, all right? The dropout rate was way too high. And as a result, we did raise it. I think our graduation rate was around the 50%. It was actually underneath that. And in some cases, it went up to as high as 80%, right? You can look up No Child Left Behind by NPR, and there's a whole article about it. But that 80% was kind of falsified, because, in any sort of situation where I might have 50 students out of 100 that are graduating, instead of them actually now increasing the 50 on the top, it's a math trick. What you do is you take out from the 100 students, right? Take away 20 students that didn't graduate. And as a result, the percentage might look higher, but it's because you now excluded kids that were supposed to be a part of your statistic. And as a result, you excluded them just to bump up the numbers. So they didn't actually increase any sort of, education. What they did was they increased the numbers artificially. As a result, what it meant is that now the high school diploma now had an increased supply of high school diplomas, but a decrease in their skills. And so the high school diploma average rate that people were willing to pay when you just say, I have a high school diploma, now has shot down. And so now people now seek their bachelor's degree and their higher education. Okay, so that's why we go to college. Okay, now the application plan, just like if you want to go and get a job, you got to fill out a job application. To get into colleges, you have a college application. And to make it simple, you've got, California has these two systems aside from the community college system, right? Community college, you just have to show your driver's ID and go sign up and show that you live in the area, and you can go sign up for community college. But Cal State Apply, you got to graduate from high school and have a certain amount and show your scores and extracurriculars. Well, in this case, a lot of these are removing requirements for SATs. So understand that some things may be changing as the summer does come up. And then also You have Cal State, you have UC. So what you have is you have the state schools and then the research state schools. You can understand that there's only 9 of these while there's 23 of these, okay? So in San Diego, this Cal State would be the SDSU, would be CSU San Marcos. For the Bay Area would be like San Jose State, the Sacramento State. So you'll notice the word state in it when it comes down to the CSUs. State or university. 2 other ones that you should understand is also Cal Poly Pomona and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo are a part of the Cal State system as well. Then you have the UC system. These are pretty straightforward. They start with the words UC, University of California. And there's the 9 of them. There is a 10th one, but that one is UC San Francisco, which is going to be graduate school only. Then what you also have, you have 2 ways to apply to all the private schools. Common App was the original one, and then Coalition became another option that came along a little bit later. And as a result, they're both ways for you to apply. But what you understand about the UC and then these private schools is they actually ask you to write essays to represent yourself. The UC will ask you to write 4 short essays at 350 words each, while the Common App is going to ask you for 1 650-word essay and then supplemental questions for the private colleges. So Common App is actually a data service that actually takes your information and uses it to distribute to all the different colleges as a hub of information. Now, when should you start all this? Well, generally seniors are the ones getting into it. The late ones are doing it starting in October, November, right? But generally in any case where you're looking at colleges, you should have started to think about things freshman, sophomore, junior year, sat down with the family and talked about it. Generally for college applications, the juniors, after their AP tests in their junior year, after May or June, will generally meet with college counselors and start to work on the applications. Senior year, I will say, is a little bit late in some cases because in today's world, we do have so much more time and information in front of us. And so that's why I do urge that if you do have a friend that is freshman or sophomore, get them this video so that they can understand that there's information they can put together just to have their bases and their foundation covered so that they're not trying to put it together their senior year. All right. Systems of higher education, you got to understand there's, right, I said community colleges, there's a lot of them in California. CSU, like I said, 23 campuses. University of California, 10 campuses, but you got to say there's 9 undergraduate ones, okay? And then private nonprofit institutions, you can also think about like the private, USC, USD, Santa Clara University. The ones that are nonprofit are the ones that are worthy. There are these other ones that are the private for-profit institutions. You'll notice these are the ones that like to advertise on TV and things like that. Education is a business, and while Obama was president, they did open up higher education for big business and profit to be taken from it. And so there's for-profit versions of colleges where you want to be careful because they do say these cost $40K a year in many cases, but they're lesser of a degree than your California community colleges. They say you'll get more value out of a community colleges in many cases. So these are the ones you'll want to avoid. The UC and the CSU, these numbers may change a bit, so be careful with that, but it is a general ballpark, right? They're both public colleges that are four-year schools, but UCs have research-based while CSU is more of your hands-on learning. And then, you want to think about it. Why do we like certain schools more than others? Oftentimes comes down to age. Why is Berkeley more well-known worldwide than Davis, than Santa Cruz and even San Diego, right? Why is Berkeley well-known? Well, it all comes down to age. Berkeley's the oldest UC, okay? In terms of the Ivy Leagues, that's another thing as well. The Ivy Leagues have age. And what you got to understand is alumni spread out into the world and they take residence in places. And as a result, it's almost like being part of an exclusive club, and having more places set up with time, because like think of it, a business takes time to develop, and the longer business has been around with a Harvard or a Cornell or a Columbia owner, etc., then they in return may look for ways to go back and fund their old school as well, and for tax purposes, etc., blah blah blah. And so age often plays into prestige of why somebody wants to go to a school. And you can see, right, there's 45,000 students that apply every year to Cornell and only 6,000 get in, versus Harvard at 40,000, only 2,000 get in. They're very, very highly desired schools. And it's a very small percentage of kids that get in that are in the top percentile. Okay. Now you want to keep in mind too, like if you're not really a Harvard kid, and you should understand what entails a Harvard type of student. They're very, they tend to be a certain type of personality when it comes, or type of mindset when it comes to the world, right? Willing to learn and ready to try to master the different things that they find exciting. Those are kind of the types of students that Harvard and Ivy League students are, and what admissions is looking for. The students that truly show how much and willing they are willing to learn, and that they have proven themselves to an extent too. Okay. Just two pictures here. Left one is your Cal State universities and where they lie. So, if you're in San Diego and things like that, SDSU, San Marcos, those are our two closest ones, but they are, close to the coast as well, unless you do decide you want a little bit of more hot desert California near the middle. And on the right here, what you have are your UCs as well. Okay. And so there are plenty of programs for, think of it this year, you have 32 schools right here, undergraduate schools to potentially choose from, just being a California student, California resident, right? And so why would you want to pick a school, right? We talked a little bit, obviously, right? What's the first one? It's a good school, right? And I always tell students and parents, thank you, Captain Obvious, right? That's, a good school. How often have you had somebody come to you and tell you, my school is a bad school? They don't do that because it's an investment. You want to increase the value of your investment by talking positively about it. And as a result, more people want to come, and the value of the school goes up because you recruit better and better, talent over time. So it's a good school. Okay, great. Let's move on from there. What else? Okay. It has the major that I intend to study. Well, that's great too. Those are two situations that are obvious and what I like to think of as duh statements, like, of course. Okay. So what else? There are other reasons. There's people, right? That's okay, but it's not the best reason. Like if your best friend is going to a school, it is nice that they are, but that should not be the top reason. Family can be a reason to be within an area because you have an anchor, but just friends, put that on the back burner. That shouldn't be your first reason, okay? What and how, and then why. Let's talk, I like to think of it as why, how, and then what, okay? So if you can have a good why, it'll give you these other ones. If you have a good what, it's all right, but then it limits the rest of them. Okay, does that make sense? So why would you want to go to a school? Okay, why would you want to go to UCSD? Well, I want to go to UCSD because I want to do something in the sciences. And in the sciences, they have all these different programs. And from those different programs, I have all these different options. That makes sense? Versus I want to go to UCSD because I want to be a, let's just say, computer scientist. Okay, that limits it as a little bit more. Then you have to go and, how are you going to do that? You're going to try different programs, right? And then it limits your why a little bit more. So it's not the best to start with just the profession. It's better to start with a reason or an underlying motive that you happen to have, what you enjoy doing with your time. Do you like creating? Do you like helping others? Those are situations that can then lead into good choices for your professions and also give you, a different variety of choices that all align with your MO, the way that you do things, okay? So keep in mind, prestige is not everything, okay? We as a nation are used to logos. We're used to big names, and that's a big thing. But a big name does not mean that it has the program that fits you and what you're looking for. So actually what's most important is the quality of fit of the school and also the size of the pond, whether or not you're struggling to compete or whether or not you have the ample and rightful opportunities for you to flourish. Those are just as important and actually more important than the name brand of the school, okay? Here's a couple of other things to think about. Nobel laureates at the UCs, right? What is a Nobel laureate? A Nobel laureate, there's 68 of them from the faculty and researchers of the UCs, right? There's 69 Nobel Prizes here, okay? However, you got to understand, it's, you know, where would you want to go learn chemistry? Probably from these and these, right? Because a Nobel laureate is somebody who has the top level of research and understands their industry and understands their subject to such a level that they were awarded one of the top awards in the world. You know, medicine, right, as well, right? Physics, right? And just one is great too. You got to also go look into it, right? You can look up all the Nobel laureates as to see who's still around teaching too, okay? But again, the schools have their value due to time, right? They've been around for a certain amount of time, and then also the teachers that are there, because the teachers, you want better teachers. You want people who know what they're talking about. What else, right? So another thing is class size, right? Do you want it as a large class size? Can you handle lecture rooms and things like that? Or do you want smaller class size, you know, with private schools, etc.? Public schools are going to be very, very large, okay? And then, so size of the school, size of the class, the environment. Keep in mind, certain cultures may have trouble fitting in certain areas just due to the fact that you might not have the right type of restaurants or the right type of access to grocery stores that you normally have been used to, okay? Activities that you're able to do, right? If you love San Diego's surf and you wake up and surf every day, you don't necessarily want to go to a place where you're, you know, locked in the snow, unless you're a snowboarder, right? Does that make sense? Or if you hate the cold, don't end up in those situations, right? You have a choice of location, and also with culture, just due to the way that America, oftentimes, especially with immigrants, we gravitate to certain areas, and that does oftentimes create safety as well. You know, what I often find is that people put too many in their college list. What I have here is just 9 schools to start off with. Yes, we can go with more eventually, but you've got 3 target schools, you got 3 reach schools, and 3 fallback schools. You know, in reality, you only need probably 2 fallback schools, and then your target schools and reach schools can be a little bit more plentiful. But we already talked about, right, the number of schools. We want to limit ourselves to about 10 is already a lot. Okay, each school that you applied to will ask for about $100 total in fees as well. Whether it comes down to sending scores, sending transcripts, dealing with each school does add up as well. So if you apply to 40 schools, you're looking at about $4K in terms of money you're spending to apply. You got to know what major you're applying for and why. So it's a start to look into. Now, obviously, if you're a freshman or sophomore, you don't know what major you want to do just yet, at least have an idea of what the schools that you're looking at in terms of options and what they look like, okay? And we want our list of reasons, right? A good school, it's a good school is not a good enough reason. It's the major that I want is not a good enough reason. I want to see and hear what it is that, you know, reasons why you actually want to go somewhere and the student fit, okay? So just a bit of, you know, homework, I get it. A little bit of homework, but put together a college list. And you can let me know. I'm more than happy to consult with you as to seeing, you know, what it looks like in comparison to your GPA, comparison to where you stand in the level of classes that you've taken as well. All right. Okay, next. What I think is extremely important is keeping a very accurate and updated extracurricular list, all right? What that means is that there's a format to the extracurricular activities that you should be putting your activities into, all right? You know, what it is they ask you to categorize it, whether it's additional education, volunteer work, activities and clubs, or awards and honors. You'll put a category letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, okay? Then from there, you'll have an activity name. So, you know, it could be my Homestead High School basketball team varsity, right? It could be the high school journalism and newspaper staff. It could be key club, you know, after school key club, you know, things like that. What you want to do as well is give a solid description, but what you want to avoid is, you know, they do have a certain limit of words. So, you know, tell me everything. And what we do in our program is we help you get it down into a concise format so that you can say everything you need without losing value along the way. Then on the right, what you also have is you have the hours per week, weeks per year that you end up spending on that category, on that activity, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year as well. You can check them off because what they want to see is consistency with certain activities that you really enjoy, and then trying new activities out if you don't like certain ones, okay? And so make sure you put in the keywords, right? It's a way to show what you've done, the leadership positions, the responsibilities, the projects, the examples of things you've done. You want to make sure you show how much time you've really spent on certain things. And here's another quick thing to understand. You can look through your calendar and brainstorm through pictures, and even parents can look through bills and receipts for this whole list of different things that you may have done that can actually categorize as extracurricular activities in today's world. Self-learning through additional books or online lessons or YouTube, write it down. If it's applicable to what you're trying to apply for, we'll find a way to make sure it ends up on there. Fun activities, right? Crafts, projects, you know, computer code, making things. What is it that you've done? You know, are there certain things around the house that you've helped put together in terms of projects too? Family vacation, there's opportunities and experiences. I had one student who's been to every other continent, you know, except for Antarctica. And as a result, he was able to call himself a world traveler. And some of his stories had a lot to do with experiencing the world. You know, extreme sports, snow, skate, surf, you know, a lot of these new activities that we do, you know, these new generations have, if you do them, it adds to, you know, the activities, the extracurriculars, the things you do out on your own. The schools want to know what it is that separates you from the rest. Hobbies, activities you do in your own time, you know, additional things outside. Community help, volunteering and helping others. What is it that you actually do help your community out with? Go ahead and think about it. And then what you want to do is take credit for your work. Tell all of it, and then you condense it, right? Don't assume that they know anything about it. So here, it's great to say you're the student newspaper and the editor of the newspaper, which is a great position. It's a great title. But if you don't actually tell me what you did, it's hard for me to give credit to you as an admissions counselor. So make sure that it's being said. Now, word limit and things like that, we can always edit that later. So make sure you say all that you need. That's what a big part of my program is making sure I get all the information out of you first, so that we can go through it together and edit out the stuff that we don't need to say or the things that we're being redundant in, okay? Now, next, what I've also given you here are the essay questions, okay? You know, and the biggest question I'm always gonna get is, Eric, what if they change these? Well, from my experience, I've been doing this for a decade now. The essay questions don't really change. And in the time that they did change on us, you know, before actually the UC system used to have just 2 questions, okay? And the common application, these have changed just a little bit, but what I've always noticed is that they still ask the same thing. What is it that they ask, you might think, is there's 2 questions. They've got the internal and the external. Basically, who are you and what is it that you influence the world around you? So you outward, right? And then the other one is external influences. What is the world around you and how does that influence you? Okay, so let me read these out for you really quick, and I'm going to categorize them real quick. Describe an example of your leadership experience which you have positively influenced others. Okay. Help resolve disputes or contributed to group efforts over time. Number 2, every person has a creative side. It can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original and innovative thinking, artistically, name a few. How you express your creative side. That's another internal one. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? That's another internal one. Okay. Describe how you've taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. That's something externally influencing you. Describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have overcome, right? Okay. Describe your favorite academic subject and how it's influenced you. What have you done to make your school and your community internal, right, a better place? And then what is the one thing that separates you apart? That's just a wild card. Okay. So you can talk about anything there. Now, here, right, as said, there's 8 prompts. You choose for 350 words each. Okay. I do ask that you write as much as you can. I've taken a 5,000 word essay and gotten it down to, at that time, the 500 word limit. So understand that I can help you get these condensed, but I can't help you write it. So give me as much content as possible and we can edit it together is how we work in our program. Now in the common application, you'll notice you only have to choose one and it's 650 words. And so here it says, share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written or one that responds to a different prompt or one from your own design. So there's a wild card and you can answer any question that you would like anyway. So, I start with these with my students. We end up picking 4. We try to write 5. And then with your common application, we usually will take, the best one that we have and try to make sure we elaborate it for this. And then also see what other content we might be able to use. But generally it takes the 4 from here and we can evolve it into something that works for our common application. All right. So keep in mind, we guide, we do not write. That's something that I'll continue to say. We guide, we do not write, because I want to talk about how I got into this program and how I came to work on all this with you guys, right? It's really important to me that we guide and we do not write, because when I went through my programs with, what I did was I grew up in the Bay Area and, we looked for the best services around. But the problem was that a lot of these services were out of the price range when it came down to these hourly rates that they were asking. And so my mom took our budget, and what she did is she, signed me up for short sessions with 3 or 4 different college counselors. And I do remember going and meeting with them, and each one wanted to do their different things, do this with extracurriculars, change these words in your essay. You want to talk about this instead because that topic that you have is too generic, blah, 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 blah. And they all took their turns in having their hand within my application. And when it all came in and was said and done, I didn't get into a certain level of school that I actually had expected to, right? And it was funny because it wasn't actually until after I had gone to UCSD and graduated and I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my career. And I had so much experience with SATs and things like that with my parents throwing me into it because I was the first child of our family. And I got a lot of that extra attention when it came to, the learning side of things, the education side of things. And what I realized was one time I went home to visit my parents, still trying to figure out my real career. And I actually pulled out all these old documents because my mother's actually an accountant and she did a really good job of keeping these files for me. And I had these files of all my applications and I started to go through them and started to realize how they were all the same in a very general format. They just wanted to understand what a student did and what made them unique, what made them them. But another part of it was the fact that as I was reading my old essay, I realized that it wasn't even words and didn't sound like me. It was a topic that seemed completely foreign, right? You would assume that at least when you look at something, of this magnitude, an essay that you spent this much time writing, that you would end up in a situation that, you at least remember what you talked about. And I remember reading my essay and thinking, who wrote this? That's not me. Those are words I haven't even used, and I've graduated from college and I never used those words. And so I realized that the essays, with so many people wanting it to sound a certain way, too many hands end up getting involved, and it ends up doing the opposite. It sounds like a disjointed, or just ultimately doesn't sound like your student, doesn't sound like you. And so that's where I came up with the, we will guide, we will not write. I have a whole process to help your student get through the writing. However, I'm not writing for you, and that really avoids that issue where, it doesn't become the student's unique voice. Now, on the other hand as well, was I also noticed on my extracurricular list, I had a great extracurricular list. I did a lot of things while I was in high school, but a lot of those things that I gave you for the brainstorm actually didn't end up on my extracurricular list because people didn't ask me about them. People didn't say and ask, what have you learned on your own? What are things that you do for fun outside of these extracurriculars that are what school asks you to write down, or the after school activities? And so that's why I came up with these packets, because, not only had I helped out my, by going through it, inadvertently, I'd actually helped out my little brother, right? My brother didn't have to take as many SAT classes, didn't have to go through as much counseling as I did. My mom took him to one place and he got into UCLA from there. Obviously he did his work as well, but the guidance that he got was more direct, if that makes sense. And so, the extracurriculars not being filled out the way that I do believe it should have been, and then my essays not being work that actually was my voice. I do believe that if I was able to go back and, take this program and show it to my younger self and put myself through it, the results I do believe could have come out higher, right? But that's again, that's just what I do believe with the way that I put together this program, is that it was meant to alleviate that issue that I had when I went through my own education and my own application program. Was there were too many other voices trying to write for me, and the extracurricular list wasn't really just extracurriculars. It didn't really fill in all my extracurriculars. What it did was it focused on what was deemed an extracurricular by school, and as a result, there were parts of it that I probably could have filled out to a higher extent that would have led to a better result, right? And so, over time, I've been doing this for over a decade now. And what I wanted to just share with you are, the results that I've had back before the pandemic. I still had my students come into an office here in San Diego and Mira Mesa. But now that actually everything's online, I do have an ability to help out on a broader level, and students all across the globe. I've had over 70 students. I couldn't get all the pictures of the sweaters on here, but I do have also them with, on LinkedIn and even on Yelp and Google. I don't know if they've left any reviews on Google just yet, but there are a lot of testimonials that you can go seek out if you do want the links to them. I'm more than happy to provide them for you. All right. And so, with that being said, Plan Organized College, we're here to help. You do have all of these documents here now, and you do have access to them. When you do get it and you download it, it is password protected. The password is actually college bound, a capital C, and a capital B. So college bound, BOUND. And if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to come out and ask. I do call it a worry-free college app, because I do want you guys to help, to understand that you do have me as a resource to help guide you through the process. I am very easy to contact. If you want to just send me a text, you can go ahead and do so, 858-668-8248. And go ahead and message me, and I'm more than happy to schedule a time after you've gone through all those pages and gotten something started. I'm more than happy to converse about that. But I've already assigned you a little bit of homework, so now it's your job to get that little bit done for me, so that we can actually have a good conversation about what direction to take from there. Okay. All right. I hope that was useful for you guys. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you do have questions, and we will be in contact very soon. All right.